You are watching Wide Field with Vivian Burchill. This is Wide Field.
Welcome to the show. I'm Vivian Burchill, your host, and my guest, yet again, is Mr. Lamine Savadogo, who an electricity or energy expert, and he's the president of Marison Energy Systems. Welcome, Mr. Lamine.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me back again.
It's always a pleasure to host you on my shows. And today, we are going to be talking about the enabling environment for renewable energy in Africa. And to start, the recently concluded UN General Assembly, the topic was climate change. So the question I have for you before we even dive into Africa, what countries in the world, in your experience or through your research, are the most biggest contributors to the climate change crisis?
Okay, thank you. Indeed, the issue of climate change dominated the UN General Assembly in New York just last week. And as you know, finally, there is a consensus globally on the causes of all these climate events that we are seeing. They are speeding, there are more of them, they are more damaging and things like that. So if we look at countrywide, we have a few big culprits. You have China, which is the biggest because of all the coal plants that they've been operating to generate electricity. We have the United States, which is another one, big industrial country. We have India, where also coal is a big issue. And then we have other countries that do a little bit more and less, but basically those are the big three.
Closely related. In your, again, experience and research, what are the biggest industries that are culprits or contributors to climate change and global warming?
Okay, well, sort of just not my view, but there is a scientific consensus on this.
Okay.
The issue has been debated for many years, so we've all come to a consensus. So the scientists are saying, so I must say that my sector, the electricity, has been a big contributor, taken globally. But individual countries have been doing more and more to cut down their carbon emission. I'm glad to say that here in the United States, the investor-owned electric utilities, of which I'm a global ambassador, have done a relatively good job at trying to mothball coal power plants. So our coal consumption to generate electricity has declined. But we have industry, we have transportation, we have a lot of other sectors that are contributing to this too. So we know that global commerce is very big, and to carry all these goods around, we have to have ships, and those ships, they burn essentially diesel fuel. And there are thousands of them crisscrossing the oceans almost on a daily basis. So that's another big part of it.
Yes.
Industrial sectors, agriculture is another one where we use a lot of agricultural equipment, mechanized to do agriculture. So those are the main culprits of this thing. There are many more, but let's just focus on those few.
Before we dive into Africa, for the benefit of our viewers who have not seen you before in an interview, I know I glazed over your introduction, but I would like for you to speak, to tell us about your role in the energy sector, and your role with the Edison Institute. Just for viewers to understand where this passion is coming from, where this experience is coming from.
Okay. I am originally from Mali. I've been living here in the Boston area for the last over 30 years. And my business has always been to intermediate between the United States and Africa, to find technologies here in the United States that can help the economic development of Africa. That's been my professional career dedication. So in doing so, I have come to focus on the electric power sector, because without electricity, there is not going to be much in terms of economic development. It's such an integral part of modern day now. So in Africa, we still have a long way to go in order to be able to have electricity accessible to all. So the Edison Electric Institute is the association of all the investor-owned utilities in the United States. And it also has non-US members. So it's a forum for all of those utilities to get together to talk about common issues. So my role has been to try to build a bridge between those utilities and African utilities, to give you a sense of the impact on those utilities in the US. Collectively, they supply electricity to about 229 million Americans, with all the 50 states, the investor-owned utilities. And so we want to make sure that the benefit of electrification is extended to people all over the world.
Yeah, thanks for that reintroduction, which takes me again back to our conversation on electricity. We talked about some of the contributors to climate change, and from what you have just presented to us, it is the Western countries mostly. And so today we're focusing on Africa. As the rest of the world is moving away from fossil fuels and transitioning into renewable energy, in June, the African Union launched the Africa Single Electricity Market, which is the biggest or largest continent-wide strategy or market for electricity. And they are going to, the belief or the plan is to try to connect all 55 member states of the African Union to electricity. And they will be working alongside the NEPAD's comprehensive electricity plan. I worked on NEPAD programs before moving to the United States. That was my job, my full-time job. So I'm cognizant of some of the complexities that come with trying to regionalize some of these programs. But I also know that Africans are very determined to come on board and try to have their place in the energy sector, or on anything, really governance and infrastructure development. So, but my question to you first is, what is the status of electricity on the continent of Africa?
Okay, I must say that our continent is where you have the largest number of people who are not connected to electricity yet. And there are regional variations. You could go to countries which have 100% access to electricity, such as countries in the northern part of the continent, Algeria, countries like Egypt and places like that. And then you can go to countries where the access rate is in the teens or even 20s. You have talking about countries, the newly independent country of South Sudan. You have places like Eritrea, you have places like Guinea-Bissau, where the electrification rate is really very low. But on an average, we could say about 44% of Africans, according to the International Energy Association, about 44% of Africans have access to electricity. Also, it varies from rural areas to urban areas. In the urban areas, the access rate will be much higher than in the villages, where sometimes when it's zero.
Right. And so with the picture that you have just presented, we recognize that Africa as a continent is not the big contributor to climate change, because much of the continent is not electrified. But then we are also, maybe I could rephrase it and ask, what what role Africa is playing in the renewable energy sector
Okay.
before I get into how it can be a part of it.
Okay. The biggest culprits in terms of emission in Africa would be South Africa, for instance, which has a lot of coal-fired power plants, and even then they are doing a lot by replacing those with renewable energy sources. So we in Africa have the largest potential in terms of solar power, also a little bit about wind. Solar is all over the continent, but wind, there are certain locations where there are more wind resources than other areas. We also have a lot of hydroelectricity potential around the equator, the Congo River Basin. We have the Inga Dam that has been in the planning phases for so many years.
In Congo?
Yeah, has about 40,000 megawatt potential. That's a lot of power. On the eastern side of the continent, we also have some geothermal sources in places like Kenya. So all of those are the potential in Africa. And we even have a potential with the Sahara Desert to be able to generate electricity and export it to Europe and even the Middle East.
So with all this potential, why are we still not being, not having electricity in the state? I mean, in the continent. Sorry, on the continent. Why are we still not having the continent electrified?
That's a big question. There are a lot of reasons. Many of them, I think, are governance issue. So if you look at a country like Algeria, which has made it a policy, they have been able to achieve access to about 100% of their population for electricity. It's also helpful that they have a lot of natural gas and other oil resources. But so does Nigeria, okay? So does Angola, a lot of places. So, but it's a government's orientation, the policies that you put in place, the incentives, the organization of a sector, the ability to attract financing that also can make a difference. Making sure that when you build power plants, you generate electricity, you sell it, that you are able to have enough revenue to at least cover your cost. So in most of the continent, people, unfortunately, African utilities are selling electricity and losing with every kilowatt hour that they sell.
And which I want us to go back to renewable energy. It's now a buzzword globally. And last time you were in the studio, we talked about the enabling or the enablers for renewable energy, which were mostly minerals. And for those who didn't watch that episode, we could always show some of the minerals that are required for renewable energy. So, how much of those minerals can be found in Africa?
Okay. The minerals, essentially, we have minerals such as manganese, such as cobalt, such as copper, such as chromium. They are strewn around the world. Okay, a lot of them are in China, but we do have a lot of them in Africa. Even for some of them, like cobalt, we have about, the Democratic Republic of Congo has about 70% of the world reserves in that area.
Let me pause you right there.
Okay.
So, let us think about this. 70% of the world's supply of cobalt is just in one country in Africa. That is the Congo, which is the same country that is struggling to build the Inga Dam. So, what is happening to all that cobalt?
Okay. The Democratic Republic of Congo, I must say also, is one of the countries in Africa with the lowest access to electricity, with all these resources available to them. So the cobalt essentially exists in its raw form. It's mined by big mining companies and exported for processing in other parts of the world, namely China. Okay, so
Of course.
and copper, which is mined, the Democratic Republic of Congo has a lot of resources as well, copper. So does Zambia. Then again, it's mined and exported. The Republic of Congo has a lot of resources in manganese, another strategic mineral for renewable energy. That also is, for the most part, mined and exported. So does Ghana have bauxite. And so you see this all over the continent, yes, that with a few exceptions, those resources are just mined and exported in their raw form.
And what is that costing Africa?
This is, to sort of get our viewers' mind around that, I'm going to refer to the situation here in the United States.
Yes.
The United States Geological Survey, which is a bureau in the ministry, the Department of Interior, which tabulates all these issues related to mining, last year in 2020 estimated that about the mines, all the mines, the mining activity in the United States, non-fuel, so it doesn't include oil or anything like that, just mining, the value at the mines were about $80.3 billion total for 2020. Okay, so when you extract the mines and you do a first processing of them, the values of that, those 80 billion plus, become 700 billion plus. Okay?
Yes.
So you could see the jump of the value that it adds to the country's economy. And those 700 plus billion, if you take that, you process that again, that injects a total of over $3 trillion in the economy. That contributes to the GDP. So let me repeat that again. From 80.3 to over 80.3 billion to 700 plus billion, and to over 3 trillion.
Yes.
Okay?
All this value addition is because of the processing.
The processing, exactly. So the year for which I have a figure, 1999, Africa totally exported about 119 billion in raw minerals, okay? 119 billion.
Can we convert that to what it would have been if it was processed?
Well, so if we take the same forward linkage or the multiplier, which is a little less, it's in a seven times, okay? More or less, my calculation may not be right. But let's even say, because the U.S. economy is more efficient, okay? You've had more experience, the roads are here, you have more expertise. So let's just say in Africa, it's only 3 times, okay? So if those 119 billion were processed in Africa, you had 119 times 3, the first time, and then the second time you multiply it again, you find yourself in the trillions of dollars. So the impact of that, every time I go in Africa and I see a port, you see these, they are loading these raw materials with all the things that you see being shipped out. And this includes things such as cotton, includes things such as cocoa,
coffee.
Yeah, exactly. I see jobs going out because you are shipping those jobs to places where they are being processed. So in fact, if we export our cobalt to China, we are exporting jobs to China. If we export our bauxite to another part of the world, we are exporting our jobs go along with that. Okay, this is where it becomes really damaging. And I just want to draw everybody's attention on the opportunity that this focus on clean energy presents, because all the raw materials, most of them are in Africa, and we haven't even looked for, the mineral exploration has not even discovered many of them yet, okay? So, and the numbers that I cited are undervalued, because I know that African countries do not have the resources to even count for what is taken out. It is what the mining companies tell them that we tabulate. So it's much, much more than that. So if we take advantage of this, the convergence of a few factors, A, that we are the energy transition, B, that the COVID pandemic showed the entire world that we have some supply chain issues. That if China is the factory of the world, something like this happened, here we didn't even have masks. This is not a big technology. There was a short of supply because most of it is manufactured in China. So for the globe's interest, including China itself, it is better to have a diversification of a supply chain. So there is no other place in the world that is so ideally situated for this as another source of supply for a lot of the equipment that we're going to be needing to enable the clean energy era.
Maybe a question I would have for you is, why do you think the African leaders are not seeing this multiplier effect and not trying to really tap into it?
This is a big mystery, because they are very highly educated people who advise our governments. But you have to say also that they are grappling with a lot of issues. It's not easy to attract investment to come, and the first thing you ask a company to come and process I'll give you an example. What's important? Ghana, the Republic of Ghana. The first president of Ghana, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, had this vision. They have bauxite in their country. To process the bauxite, you need electricity. So he arranged, this was one of his first big visions for Ghana and Africa in general, to build a dam, a hydroelectric dam, to produce electricity so that you can extract the bauxite, process it into some form of final goods, and export it to the rest of the world. This was his vision. So it's not like no leader had this vision. But to make it happen is a lot of problems, because you have the reluctance of potential investors. You also have the fact that there are industries in other parts of the world already that are not looking too kindly to a new entrant into the market. So you add to that political instability in some places, some civil strifes. It makes it extremely difficult to have a stable government, because you have to have stability, so that stable environment, stable political situation, good incentives, and the ability to supervise the sector so that they don't steal you blind. Okay,
right.
And those factors have not been present everywhere. South Africa has a very rich mining history, but most of that was done under the apartheid regime, and the majority of the people in South Africa ended up not benefiting from that.
So I know you've pointed out all these challenges, but as a professional in this sector, the electricity sector, what advice would you have, or do you have, for leaders in Africa? What steps can be taken to, one, increase electricity in Africa, but increase the renewable and sustainable electricity?
Okay. It's a lot of, the biggest issue for us in Africa is a lot of policies regarding, let's say, the electric power sector are decided outside of Africa.
How so?
Meaning it's experts from somewhere else, institutional, financial institutions, governments that want to help. They come to Africa with their vision, okay? So the policy making is extremely important, so that you have a policy. I was referring to Algeria earlier. It was because of a policy that that the government had, that it is important for us to have 100% electrification. We have the resources. We are going to train the people. They had the universities to train the engineers, the staff to do all the things that are required to do the planning properly. During the apartheid area, we could say one thing about the apartheid regime. They also put in place policies to develop the electric power sector. You know, South Africa had about 40,000 megawatts of installed capacity. They even had 2 nuclear power plants. It was the 6th electric utility in the world, okay? Now we have blackouts in South Africa. It's just is inexcusable. So issues of governance are extremely important, and electricity should not be politicized because it's a basis of the economy.
Right.
And you have to make sure that the sector remains viable, that you don't interfere in the management of, for political reasons, of the utility. Let the professionals do their job.
I hope the leaders are listening, or advisors to the leaders. I hope you're listening and try to do the best for the continent of Africa. But, you know, let me be a devil's advocate here and say, okay, as much as we're pushing to have this renewable energy, there are rumors that, you know, for example, experts within the United States are working on alternatives to some of the raw materials for renewable energy or the resources. What do you have to say on that, about that? Sorry.
Okay. well, you know that it's not a rumor. In fact, it's a fact that we were talking about cobalt earlier, which is very important for batteries. And batteries, that means storage. And storage is extremely important for not only electric cars, but also for our homes, because the sun doesn't shine all the time. So when you collect the energy during the day from the sun, you have to store it for use at night or for those days when there is no sun at all. Same thing goes for wind power. So anything that is necessary for that, namely cobalt, you have to make, if you wake up to say, we have to have this renewable energy, and then you find out that most of it is coming from China, which the world now is in the consensus, we have to stop China. We don't want to depend on them. Then you start thinking about, okay, we're getting this from the Democratic Republic of Congo. People talk about it's not stable. People talk about there are children working in the mines and all of that. So you say, okay, what else can we do? So research labs across the globe, even in China, are working very hard to come up with a substitute for cobalt. There is a program at the University of Irving in Texas, which is advanced, actually. They are doing a lot of research in terms of coming up with something that can compete with cobalt. But we are not there yet. For now, the experts are saying that there is no readily available, sustainable, and economical replacement for cobalt. So, but the African decision makers have to be cognizant of the fact that the convergence of these factors, when everybody agreed that we have to move forward, and that we have these resources that we need, the minerals, and that those minerals exist for the most part in Africa. And Africa has the labor. Africa has the potential of producing energy, electricity, to process those minerals. And importantly, the labor force.
Because of the high unemployment rate currently.
We have, in some cases, 40% unemployment rate. So if you put all of these things together, the message of the Africans as a group, I don't think that the Democratic Republic of Congo should go by itself, Zambia by itself, Ghana by itself. It should be, at a minimum, a regional issue, okay? To get together, to come up with one position, okay? To say that we are ready and willing to play our role in the global community so that we can develop our continent, save our globe, and make sure that the young people, our young people, also have access to high quality jobs, because mining jobs pay very well. In the United States here, it is estimated that the average salary in the mining sector is about $95,000 a year. Okay, so in Africa, even if it's not that, imagine if we create the mining jobs all around the continent. It would really go a long way to, and then you will have also linkages, because if you have people who work, they make money, they can send their children to school, they can afford health care, they will spend, the economy will expand also.
And then, of course, there are arguments about the conditions, mining conditions. So what advice would you have for that, if any, making them humane? And also, we know that mining in the process destroys the environment that we're trying to protect. So that's the whole conundrum that is.
Okay, that is our challenge as mankind. But we can find good examples around the world. Australia is a big mining country. They have done it for the most part in a sustainable and economically viable way. We have a lot of mining here in the United States. The state of Nevada is a great producer of silver and gold and other things. So examples exist in Australia, here in the United States, in Canada, another big mining country, in parts of Europe, in parts of Asia. So those technologies and techniques and processes exist, so you can do it without violating the earth.
So we have best practices.
Yeah, we have them around. It's just a question of trying to find how we can do it in an economically and environmentally sustainable way.
You've talked about some of the things that need to be done, but my question to you is, what can African leaders and partners do to help Africa achieve their energy goals, renewable energy goals, over the next few years?
Okay, electrification is not new.
Yeah.
There are plenty of experiences around the world, where countries have been able to reach 100% electrification. What I see happening is, in many instances, solutions developed outside Africa, not really seriously tested, being imposed, I would say, in some parts on Africa. We have, for you to have a viable electricity sector, the electricity has to be able to be tied to industrialization and mining, so that when you produce electricity, you have viable businesses that are consuming it and that can pay for it. And then you tie that to the local population. You have to have a base. So the industrialization is extremely important if the electricity sector is going to be viable. Mm-hmm. But so if people in the rural areas, it's important, but we have to make sure that we don't end up having the flavor of the day is like microgrids. Those are important, and I've seen that a lot of microgrid projects that are in Africa, a lot of them are not viable economically speaking, financially. Why? Because you have to make sure that the people for whom you build that have jobs. Mm. And the jobs that they can get, sustainable, high quality paying jobs, will come from industrialization. So we have to be reminded that the electrification, industrialization, and mining should all be together. And then we can use that as a basis to cover everybody. So who people cannot pay can be subsidized by people who can pay. I mean, here in Massachusetts, everywhere in the United States, you have people who cannot pay the electric bills, okay? But they can be helped because those who can pay produce enough revenues for the electric utility and the government to be able to subsidize those who cannot pay. Even the richest states in the union, such as California, you have a lot of people who cannot pay their electric bills. So we have to make sure that we tie electrification, mining, and industrialization to be able to make it sustainable. That's one important thing. The African governments also have to remember to strengthen the regional cooperation. Already you talked about the single market. We have regional groupings for distributing power. Those need to be strengthened. You know.
In what ways?
In what way? If it is up to me,
Yep.
I would actually, rather than having all these small electric utility companies, I would have them join together, okay? And so you have a larger pool of companies, even if it's regional, from the generation side. Again, some people don't believe in the big central power plant. I think I do, because I see that even here in all the countries that are talking about renewable and distributed generation, everybody still has central power plant. They are not talking about getting rid of them. Okay, so it's not going to be different in Africa. We have to have those central power plants that can generate the base load that can support industrialization. We have to that, whether it comes from hydropower or gas, okay? Because I don't think we can say goodbye to gas yet, natural gas. You know, everything that is happening is indicating to us that we will need gas for some time. And we have to spend a little bit more time to see how we can use a technology called carbon capture, okay? So capture some of the carbon that is emitted. Now, the question is, what do we do with that carbon? Okay, that is the big issue that we have to face. So these are some of the issues that Africans have to be able to do their thinking on their own. And anybody who comes with experience or thinking should be added to enrich it, but not to impose a solution made somewhere else and just impose it on the African continent when it really doesn't fit in some cases.
We have seen some of the challenges that brings, imposing external, for lack of a better word, processes and ideologies or practices. But yeah, I appreciate, that perspective and for informing us about the complexities of achieving the renewable energy goals.
Yeah,
on the continent.
And on the mining side, one thing I would also advocate for African mining, so to have collectively, sort of, if an investor comes, they have to have a vetting process. Okay? So here in many countries now, in fact, just this morning I was following a webinar where the European countries and America, the transatlantic union, was thinking about setting up systems to check investors coming in. In fact, they are doing this essentially to catch if the Chinese are trying to capture strategic sectors in their economies, okay? Russian and Chinese. So Africa, we also have to come up with some scheme where we can, when a company wants to come and invest, that we have to have a system to check that company, where are they coming from, what have been their experience in other parts of the world. There's got to be that vetting process, not by one country, but collectively, regionally or even continentally, so that if a company does something bad in Democratic Republic of Congo and wants to go invest in Ethiopia, there is a way for the Ethiopians and the Congolese to talk to each other.
A red.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's a very, very exciting piece of advice because I hadn't even thought about the need for a vetting process and the impact of not vetting on different countries. So it's in a way a good governance practice.
Yes.
And as someone who worked in identifying some gaps in our governance systems within Africa. I appreciate that perspective. So, Lamine, your work has obviously been appreciated by many, and you've got some recognitions for it, including the one recognition from the Edison Institute. What was that?
Well, the Edison Electric Institute, as they have us three ambassadors, three global ambassadors, one for Europe, one for Australia, New Zealand, Asia, and I'm from Africa. So they recognized our work in how we have been able to help establish relationships between the United States and Africa in the area of electric utility management. So it's a trophy that I'm very proud of. That is an honor that such a distinguished association bestows on me. So I was very, very thrilled.
Well, and the other one, obviously, is this beautiful piece. What can you tell us about it?
This one is really near and dear to me because it's a painting made by somebody who has been a friend for a very long time. He was a businessman, retired now, who has a second career as a painting. So he has what he calls a series of heroes paintings. People, in his view, have been heroes in one way or the other. So he painted this for me as one of the heroes. And as people can see, I will read from his description of a painting. The painting is an abstract representation of a national flag of Mali, which is accented with horizontal streaks of gold dip. So we have a Mali flag here, the green, yellow, and red. That's a flag of Mali. And then we have an overlay of 50 stars of the American flag to represent my two homelands. The four sides of a painting are represented by a gold mica, and each side is marked with a special medallion of gold mica. One for my birthplace, Mali, one for my birth continent, Africa, and one for my adopted home, and one for the special brotherhood between him and me. So it is something that I'm very proud of. When I wake up in the morning, I see my two homes represented in such a unique and artistic way. The painter's name is Jim Elwood, and he lives now in Naples, Florida.
This is so beautiful, and I love the concept of it. And again, it shows you how much value your work brings to different people, or how valued your work is by different people. So again, thank you for all you're doing to bridge these gaps between the United States and Africa. I'm proud of you. We're proud of you as African diaspora, and we look forward to continue building bridges between our homeland and our adopted land.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And congratulations.
Thank you to EI and to my brother, Jim Elwood.
Well, Lamine, thank you. It's been an honor again having you on the show to talk about something you're extremely passionate about, which is electricity. And today it's the sustainable or renewable energy. You know, it's important for us to continue having conversations about what that means to local economies, because it's become a global issue, but it affects local communities as well. So it's important for us to look at this whole picture. You know, we want electric cars in the United States. What does that mean? Where do they come from? And we want so many things, you know, to bold action, but what does that bold action mean in terms of the supply chain, in terms of production? So this is great. Thank you for being here. Thank you for talking about Africa, for raising the awareness for the need to tap into our resources to boost renewable energy in Africa.
Thank you very much for having me. As always, it's a pleasure to come to your studio and talk about these burning issues.
Right, and I hope to bring you back to continue talking about electricity and energy and climate change, both in the United States, here in Massachusetts, and in Africa.
All right, thank you. It will be my pleasure and my honor.
And to our viewers, thank you for watching. Till next time.